All right. Tēnā koutou katoa, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of our SPMP committee for the Triennium. We're going to start with our karakia, and you're all going to join me, okay? So, me karakia tato, tākana te marama ki a tato, tākana te araha ki a tato, tākana te rangamavi ki a tato, ko Polonia, mi te kawa, ko Mohatoturi, ko Kakapuku, ngā manga, ko Waipato, ko Waipa, ngā awa, te he, moriora. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, we have a full complement, don't we? So there are no apologies. Excellent. Disclosure of members' interests, pretty straightforward agenda today. Does anyone have anything they would like to disclose in advance? Nothing I'm aware of. Okay, thank you. And late items, I'm not aware of any late items. No one wishes to add anything, so there is nothing. Okay, then we need to confirm the order of the meeting. We need a resolution for this. Moved by Roger and Marie, I got second. Everyone in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Excellent. Okay, so our substantive item on the agenda today is the Cambridge Connections report. So Katie, if I could ask you to come to lead us through this. And just by way of introduction, you'll see in the agenda there's a 5-part recommendation from Katie here. The first 4 being to essentially receive Katie's report and various pieces of supporting documentation. And then item E is the big one where we are agreeing the problem statements at this stage of the project, okay? So we're going to get Katie to introduce it. And then we're going to actually discuss and question this in 2 parts. We'll try and deal with A through D in terms of questions and comments. And then I'm going to leave us plenty of time for recommendation E, which is the problem statements, because that is the decision point that we have to land today. I've said that we're going to be really clear on when we pass decision gates in SPMP, and this is a decision gate, okay? It's been well foreshadowed. We had a workshop discussing this, but we intend to land these problem statements today, okay? We've left us plenty of time for this, a full 90 minutes. So we should have ample time. Right, over to you, Katie, to start us off.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I thought it was useful to remind ourselves what the NZTA business case approach looks like and where we're at this phase of the project, what's gone before and what will come next by way of context before you come, and so you understand where are we today and that why is the decision coming to you for today. So we're following the NZTA business case approach, which for a couple of reasons. One is that it is modelled on the Treasury Better Business Case approach. And so for all of these sorts of projects, making sure that you've gone through a robust process where you've started by saying, well, what are the problems and what are the ways that you might fix it? And then coming through that funneling kind of approach to be able to come up with your solution at the end is really standard practice for all infrastructure style projects in the country. And the NZTA business case is no exception. And so it gets used for all transport projects, big and small. It's important to follow the NZTA business case process if we want to be eligible for NZTA funding. And that would be 50% funding if it was available for each of the initiatives in the transport plan that you get landed at the end. And so it's obviously really important from that perspective as well as being good practice. So the work that we've been doing for this phase is obviously the first phase is what is the problem? And that's the decision that's coming to you today. To get there, we've built on the work that was done in the previous round of Cambridge Connections, and you'll see that for those of you who are returning elected members with the draft strategic case that we've built on the evidence that was done before. And that's obviously then been supplemented by a lot of work with the community engagement and we've provided sort of a summary of that in the papers so that you can see how we've gone from the feedback from the public through to all those public problem statements from NZTA. So I'd like to acknowledge there are a number of people from the Community Reference Group online and the Cambridge Community Board as well. And so this work's been absolutely informed by them as well as by the feedback from the community at large. What we'll be doing next, and I guess one of the two things is that has been really important to us in the reset of Cambridge Connections is both the community engagement that I've just referred to and also this clear decision making. And so just as you're looking to put in place across all SPMP, certainly making sure we've got that decision-led approach is really critical for Cambridge Connections. And so as we finish each of the phases of the project, those outputs come to you for decision, and then which means that we can we have confidence that we've actually reflected that well, and that we move on to the next stage, so that by the time we get to the end of the project, none of that is a surprise as you've worked your way through it all, and you've had the opportunity to make sure that you've shaped the project at every single stage on the way through. So that's where we are now. Just in terms of what our next steps will be, assuming that you approve the problem statements today, we will then be planning for the public engagement phase and working out what's the potential, the long list, the potential solutions for the problems that get identified. And we'll be running an extensive public engagement process in February, March next year once everybody's back from summer break. And we'll be using the time as staff between now and then to be doing some more of the technical work to keep filling the evidence gaps that are in the draft strategic case and preparing for that public engagement phase once we hit February, March next year. And you'll see that come to you in the new year. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of where we are in this journey. But otherwise, we'll take the papers in red and just be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Katie. And look, just before we get to questions, Charlotte Fitzpatrick from the Cambridge Community Board wanted to be here but couldn't. So she's actually provided a written statement, which I'm going to get my deputy Jo just to share with the group. And then we'll go into question and comment, okay? Over to you, Jo.
Thanks, Monty. Yes, Charlotte unfortunately couldn't be here today, but did provide us with the statement. And I know there are, as Katie said, some community board members listening online. The Cambridge Community Board provided individual feedback on the problem statements, but due to the timing of our meeting and today's strategic planning meeting and policy committee meeting. Overall, we support the draft problem statements for the Cambridge Connections Plan, and we acknowledge that the next stage of the project will be crucial as we, the board, work to ensure genuine engagement with our community. As part of our advocacy role, we want to emphasise 3 points that have emerged as the Council has sought feedback on the problem statements. 1, the general feeling in our community is that this project is well overdue, and while data is necessary to help build the business case, we need to ensure momentum as much as possible and avoid unnecessary delays. We agree to the problem statements and let's keep moving forward. 2, while many comments have related directly to the Cambridge Connections business case and problem statements throughout the project, the community has and will continue to raise issues that fall outside the project scope, such as matters that could be addressed through short-term work programs, quick wins, or basic customer service requests. It is essential that these pieces of feedback are not lost and that there is a transparent process for recording, categorising, and actioning them appropriately and in a timely manner. And 3, feedback from the community on the problem statements has highlighted concerns about rapid growth, as well as previous council planning that is impacting residents today. For example, cycleway placement, road closures, and speed calming measures have worsened congestion, and there is a strong view in our community that this has already impacted the town's character, parking availability, and the economic viability of the town centre. We want to stress that, on behalf of the community, we cannot afford to wait for logical, practical solutions while developing this business case. We look forward to continue to work collaboratively with council, staff, and the community to ensure that both the strategic priorities and the practical needs of Cambridge are addressed.
Thanks, Jo. And just to be clear, I had intended to give Charlotte speaking rights. not speaking rights, but the ability to present that statement. That's why we invited her to do it in writing, okay? And just to remind the group, we have the Community Ideas Forum feeding into this. We have the Community Reference Group, and the Cambridge Community Board is another really important sort of key stakeholder in this who are feeding in. So as we go forward, we'll be making sure we hear from each of those groups. Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions and comments. At this stage, if we could basically stick to the parts of Katie's report dealing with the engagement statistics and the key themes from the engagement and the draft strategic case that's developing in the background. Let's try and stick to that, and then we'll move over to the problem statements, okay? Questions, please come through Claire beside me so I can concentrate on what's happening, and Claire will tell me the order. Right, floor is yours. I saw that one first, so we'll go Joe.
Thanks, Monty. Thanks, Katie. I was really pleased to see the public engagement process, how it's come out and how it is. And I guess wanted to say to people who are listening online, there will be plenty more opportunities for them to feed into the project if they haven't, because I know we had a lot of public engagement last time, and I know that will come. What do you think was the most valuable part of the engagement? Did you feel like that online forum was the best way for people to really feed in, or have you enjoyed hearing from people kind of outside of that, or found that valuable? Not enjoyed, I should say.
I actually think that both elements of having a community reference group that's able to meet and share ideas with each other directly and learn from each other and bounce ideas off each other has been really, really powerful. And I think that will be even more the case as we move into the next stage of the project, and a range of opportunities for the community at large to be able to have their say, so that we aren't only hearing from any particular voice, and we know that we need to keep providing those opportunities for people who wouldn't normally want to be part of an ongoing commitment, but they've got a real interest in the town. And I think that we need to make sure we cater for both of those things into the next phase as well, and where a lot of people will have solutions that they want to raise, with their short-term or long-term.
Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I was really pleased too to see the summary of the public engagement, and it's given me a lot of assurance that I think we are getting the level of feedback that we need, and there's good representation from various sectors. Yeah, I guess some of the things that I raised in our earlier workshop was making sure that the voice of the businesses in the CBD, I mean, there was mention of, that economic viability, and parking's tied up with that congestion. And I totally acknowledge that the sort of the strategic direction of this work is definitely to resolve that, but also the broader transport network and that. So my concern is that that voice about that vibrant CBD is going to be, I suppose, given the weight it deserves. Yes, and the other question that I wanted discussion about is the aspirations of Mana Whenua. And again, it's because if you look at the top 10 themes, so I'm on page 16. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's coming through there, the particular concerns of Mana Whenua. Now I did send a question through you to you before this meeting, and you've responded to say that there was a report done by Mana Whenua. Yeah, and so that hasn't been part of the package of this of this agenda item, and it did remind me actually that they have got I suppose concerns around the use of cars that then pollute the awa. Yeah, and so and also the way infrastructure is sort of deployed in the corridors and things like that. Yeah, so and I guess rain gardens might be part of that as well. Yeah, so I'm trying to get from you whether or not those 2 points are going to be able to be given enough amplification in the next phase so that we're getting a really clear view of those sort of key points. That's my, yeah, that I'm not expressing this terribly well, but yeah, that's my biggest concerns with the themes that are coming through.
Yeah, so perhaps two parts to that. So firstly about the town centre, I was actually just reminding myself about the problem statements, and without trying to jump into a discussion about the problem statements, obviously, you'll see the problem statement 2, which has actually been slightly updated, but based on feedback from elected members in the past week, but it still makes specific reference to the town centre for this very reason that, and from my point of view, if we end up with a problem statement with that explicit recognition of the importance of the town centre and the function that it provides, it allows us to bounce off that when we're thinking about what are the potential solutions to make sure that we maintain the vibrancy of the town centre, and that will include making sure that we're talking to the people who are directly impacted by that in the next phase. Yeah, we also have obviously, when I referred to work that's gone on before, and I've shared a diagram previously, including at the workshop that we had in the middle of November. The fact that Cambridge Connections isn't happening in isolation, so we have drawn on Ahuake and the Cambridge Town Centre concept plan, both of which really again stress the importance of maintaining that vibrancy of the CBD, and we're certainly conscious of that in the project, and we're getting that feedback from a number of people as well. The second one about mana whenua interests, the report, it's true that I didn't attach the report that was a summary of the engagement from the previous phase of Cambridge Connections. That's now available on our website as one of the resources, and that link has been provided to the community reference group, for example, along with the additional points that Poto Davies and Norm Hill, as the representatives of mana whenua for this project, have provided in this current phase of work over the past few months. And so that absolutely fed through into the work that we did with the community reference group. And you'll see in the second attachment where, I'm pretty sure it's, oh no, I don't remember which one. We've actually got a table where each of those interests is laid out, and that's shared themes. Again, we're talking about in the first appendix. That material was also provided to the community reference group, of which Poto Davies is one member, to be able to make sure that those interests were reflected.
Yes, thank you. And actually, that table that showed the different, I suppose, particular interests for those different stakeholders here was really helpful. Actually, thank you.
Del Marie.
Tēnā koutou. Sorry, I thought there was a few more people before me. And tēnā koe, Councillor St-Pierre, in regards to the 2 points that you raised, I'll raise at a different space around hearing and taking on what the Community Board of Cambridge have sent through the chair this morning. I will be going to a community board meeting just to ask how the new members are canvassing their community and how they draw that feedback to then give to us. But I just want to pick up on the mana whenua point that Councillor St-Pierre raised, because I also know that it was raised by Mayor Pettit in a different conversation. And you're going to reiterate for us, Katie, the relationships we have, particularly with Poto Davies and Norm Hill, if you can give some context to them, because yes, I'm hearing what Claire said around the summary of engagement, because they were great engagers at the last version we had. I'm pretty sure their version hasn't changed too much to what we can apply for here today. And I know that there's sometimes concerns from people about how much input mana whenua put into these things. And I just want to remind people that, like the Cambridge Reference Group, they give all of this time and energy. We don't pay them, but we do support them going to pick up the awards like they did in New York for the Peacock Bridge. So I just want to mihi to the mana whenua who continue to support us. But is there anything else that we need or we need to talk about at this time, Katie, around input from mana whenua that I think is just as important as our partners, and that they're not just a stakeholder. Have they raised any concerns with you directly around how we're tracking?
No, they haven't. And I, as well as having Poto Davies on the community reference group, as I think I mentioned at the workshop, I'm staying in touch with Norman Poto in parallel to make sure that they have that opportunity to raise anything that they'd like to along the way. The particular interest at the moment from Norm and Poto on behalf of mana whenua is probably particularly around looking forward to the end of the project when we start to then think about what might any of the infrastructure look like, and how do we make sure that we're developing in a way that's both environmentally sensitive, but also that we use it as an opportunity for the cultural identity and pathways. And that's something obviously that they're bringing to the Cambridge Wastewater Treatment Plant project and a number of other projects around the district. So it's a very similar theme about how we weave that into the work at that point, which comes later.
Okay, Les, it's you.
Yeah, I just got a question. The 254 responses, council says that's a large volume of feedback. I don't really think it's a large volume of feedback. For the wider community, is there anything going forward where we can get some more feedback from that?
Yes, definitely is the short answer. What you'll see at the Risk and Assurance Committee is a summary of the amount of engagement from in the previous years compared to the amount of engagement and amount of feedback for this phase of the project already. And a bit of a spoiler alert, we've had a lot more engagement this time already in the 4 months that we've been operating than the previous phase of the project. I'm actually really pleased with the amount of feedback. The number itself is 254. What we've also had is ongoing work with the community reference group, quite a lot of discussions with different people, quite a lot of cups of coffee, and a shared sort of understanding coming together. I think that when you ask people in the abstract any kind of questions, you are only going to get a small amount of feedback. I'm expecting, and that's why I keep referring to the February-March time around the community engagement, when we go out and say, so what do you want us to do about it? That's where people will really want to get stuck in. And I would expect we'll be getting far more than 254 responses at that time. And we've already been gathering some of those ideas that people have been raising along the way, because people can't help themselves but want to jump to a solution because they see they know what their lived experience is. So they know what their issues are now, and they know what they want to see for the town in the future. So yes, we're certainly gearing up for an extensive engagement approach in February, March, and I'm sure those numbers will be much bigger.
Yeah, I can completely concur with that. I think once you start talking solutions, the level of public engagement will really spark up. Okay, Pip.
Thank you, Katie. And I've I've read the paper on a number of occasions, and I think there is a definite link between the issues that have been raised through to the problem statement. And as a result of that, I'm very, very supportive of us going forward. And you can debate all you like about whether the problem statement is exactly right, but I think it broadly captures things. And for that, I'm very open to look at solutions. But as people know around this table, that I have become very vocal and was extraordinarily vocal at the time of the problems of phase 1 of Cambridge Connections. And I don't want to go back, but I just do want to start drawing some parallels between what I call phase 2, which is now, as opposed to phase 1. And in March 24, I wrote to Brian Hudson, the Transport Manager, asking the question, does Waipa District Council Cambridge Connections project and the proposed third bridge qualify as a significant project, and therefore does Waipa District Council Significant Engagement Policy dated July 21 apply to dealing with matters to it? And his response was, the Cambridge Connection project was identified through the Transport Strategy Updated 21-22, a process itself that included key stakeholders meetings and wide consultation and a submission process. A key submission from Cambridge residents and recommendation of that strategy was to identify a new bridge location in Cambridge when a Victoria Street bridge needed to be retired from the traffic. The Cambridge Connection business case was therefore begun. The study itself is not a significant project, but advancing any recommendation of the study would be. And, you know, to me, that really sort of said an organisation that says, we'll decide what you're going to do, and then when we've come up with a solution, we'll see whether you like it. And, you know, that was very problematic. As was problematic that there was the requirement to ensure secrecy amongst elected members and council members, as was a situation where sort of, you know, they ended up sort of creating a cycleways at the time that this decision was being made through probably the most logical street that the any Aotearoa routes would go. And once again, the transport manager at the time says, don't worry about that. If in 30, it's a 30-year project, and so we'll rip the roading, the cycleways up in order to satisfy the Aotearoa routes, you know, for the proposed location. So, you know, I mean, I congratulate you for taking this wider approach, but it still leaves a feeling that, you know, for the Cambridge community, that ultimately, you know, we're patching up real problems that should never have existed. Your comments.
Okay, but just before Katie goes, I just want to comment on this. You've expressed this a few times now, and as chair of SPMP, I think it's really time we put this to bed now. The reset on this project is absolutely real. It's significant. There's a total change of governance and staffing leading this project. Mayor Mike has asked me to lead this, and I've been very open with a commitment to transparency. Our chief executive is completely on board with that. I know Katie's completely on board with that. So, you know, you are now at this table as a decision maker. I'd like to acknowledge your perspective on what went before, but I would like to rule a line under that because you are here now. We are the decision makers. Your perspective is valid, but it is not true for the project that we are now running. Okay, that's my perspective. Do you just want to answer that before I get Katie's comment?
The line has been drawn, Mike.
Okay.
And you know, all I'm saying is that there is an overhang in the Cambridge community as a direct result of what had happened and how it happened, which makes it doubly important for us to truly recognise the voice of the people of Cambridge, because their voice was not heard for a long time, and there is a lot of anger and frustration as a result of that. So we have to double our effort in order to ensure that people are truly heard.
Okay, thanks, Bip. And look, you have to understand your history to learn from it, to be able to advance. And so for me, the line is drawn. I think everyone understands the history, but we need to progress as the decision maker in this, understanding our history, but not unduly dwelling on it, okay? Katie, do you want to add anything?
I think what I might just do is, again, remind ourselves that in the project implementation plan, there are 4 measures of success. And off the top of my head, they are, I mean, this is obviously not the absolute words, but they are about rebuilding that trust. They are about transparency and engagement, and then they are about project deliverables. We will be reporting on the progress against those measures of success on a quarterly basis to the Risk and Assurance Committee. and the first meeting coming up in the middle of this month. And I think that's the appropriate way for you as elected members to make sure that you have that degree of comfort that we are actually tracking that way and responding. And it's something that we are extremely conscious of, is the way that we are developing each of the stages of the project.
Okay. Sorry, Marcus first.
Yeah, I think what people need to remember, this is a reset as well, and that like Katie wasn't on board for the last time, and we need to come in with an open mind, and we need to be able to trust the process that we're going through, and that it is a reset and a refresh. And I think with some of the emails flying around, we can't hijack the process either. Like, we need to trust that our staff have got this and yeah, can do it well. Okay, Claire?
Yes, I just wanted to respond to what Katie said about the measures of success for the project being reported to the Risk and Assurance Committee. I actually think it'd be a great idea if they were reported to this group, as part of the project reporting, because I hear exactly what Councillor Pip has said. I totally accept that there's been authentic and a really foundational reset, and that the intentions going forward are to do far greater engagement and take the community with us, and I suppose to reap the benefits of an excellent process, with the feedback that we're hoping to get and guiding us through the next steps. But in a way, this is the forum that is making the decision. I think this is the forum that should be understanding how we're tracking with those measures of success.
Do you have any response on that particular audit and risk? Everyone can come to audit and risk. It is a reporting mechanism for a lot of stuff that happens in council. And I've, being a member of audit and risk, always had the view, and it'd be really useful for everyone to get this. Of course, they all get to see it, but it's not quite like being in the room. Can we consider that? We'll get back to you on that, about the best way forward. I want to consider that in our project governance group. We'll consider it and come back, okay? It's a good suggestion, Claire, and I've got some sympathy with it, okay? Hey, I don't want to get bogged down on this session because we've got some really important stuff to do. So I kind of want to rule a line under this. Mayor Mike, you've got something to say, and then I'd kind of like to close this if I can.
Sure. Thank you, Monty. Look, it's just some general comments. Just picking on Pip's comment. Hey, I think the genuineness of this reset, though, the ratepayers of Waipa, through us, in the last triennium, committed about $805,000 to this reset. So it's not insignificant. There's no way you can call it not real. It is absolutely genuine, and we committed a hell of a lot of money towards it. So we're expecting some pretty spectacular results, and there's a lot of pressure on Katie and the team and all those involved. So yeah, there's definitely no free lunch here. All those involved have got a job to do, whether they're paid or unpaid, as has the community. And look, and I'll put here, look, I think it's absolutely building momentum, and it'll continue to build momentum and engagement as it becomes more and more real for people. It was interesting, 58% of people put the bridge as the first thing, and then congestion was 50%, and the character of the town was 38%, and then the growth and planning was 33%. So those were the key things, but it's almost inversed in terms of what's going to come first and what's going to come last. The bridge is in the sort of 10+ year thing, and some of the other things here, I expect to see in the 1 to 3 year, and in that shorter term, 1 to 5 year, of fixing some of the stuff that Charlotte, the chair of the Cambridge Community Board, has brought up, and very, very pertinent about some quick fixes and some frustration. So I see this as a really positive project. It is a positive new start. We've committed resource to this. What the community has to know is when all this finishes up, more resources is going to need to be committed to this, with a rates cap on top of us. So there's some tough decisions for the community to give us some feedback on going forward, and there's going to be some tough decisions for this council to make over the next, particularly back half of this triennium. So, hey, and the other two things, as we'll quickly mention, is this, is the accessibility piece. I just want us to never lose sight of that, about those people who aren't as mobile as some of us. That came through as important to me, but it's a smaller group of people, but increasingly it's going to be an increasing amount of people as we get older. Yeah, so those are my comments today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Look, I want to move on to the substantive part of this, which is assessing the problem statements. If we have time at the end, we can go back to general questions or comments, but I want to get us through this really important part, which is to consider the problem statements and land them. Okay, over to you again, Katie.
Yeah, thank you. So as you can see in the paper, we have taken that community feedback, fed it into developing these draft problem statements based on that feedback. When the papers went out last week, I asked if elected members had any feedback about those draft problem statements, and we did receive some. And Zoe, if you could please put up the slide, because on the back of that, what we have done is amend the second problem statement to tweak, not to change the intent of it, but to clarify what the why is. Why is this a problem? Which I agree wasn't as clear as it could have been the first time round. So we'll just leave this up on the up here for you to be able to see. But like I say, the intent is to change the supporting text for this problem statement, not to change the overall intent. So these problem statements are here for your approval. And again, just to remind you that the problem statements get approved at this point of the work. The draft strategic case is the supporting evidence, and that continues to get refined over time. But certainly what you can see is a strong base already in the draft strategic case to be able to support the problem statements that have come through. So we've got both the technical evidence and the community feedback, both of which then inform these problem statements. And I'll leave them here. I'm really happy to take any questions or comments about them again.
Yeah, right. So now questions, comments, suggestions regarding the problem statements. We can have a decent go at this, and then after that, I will ask Katie to leave, and we'll formally approve them as a committee as our committee. Okay. So, Roger.
Oh, thank you. Good. Katie, I've already shared my thoughts with you, and certainly having been part of the development of the previous problem statement, I understand totally the process that's gone through, and I can see that this, although it's in a different form, it actually captures the same focus on problem that was in the last Cambridge Connection. So I'll thoroughly endorse those. I also endorse your change to the problem statement number 2, because, and I'm particularly cognizant of the need for a short-term solution to part of that problem that I think we need to address as soon as possible, and particularly the heavy goods vehicles going through the centre of the town. I think that's something that hopefully we'll look to see if there's a shorter term that can be embedded within Cambridge Connections. A question that I had, and this I think is going back to the last session we had on Cambridge Connections. We were advised then that it was important that we restricted the problem to 2 problems. Why was it that that was so important then? Because I can see the logic in going to 3, and I think the separation out into those 3 individual areas is relevant. But why was it, and why doesn't it exist now, that same requirement?
Because NZTA have changed their approach to work like this and broaden the approach for what they're calling strategic transport planning, which was a phrase that didn't exist when the previous round occurred. And so if I just keep using technical language for a moment, when in the previous round of Cambridge Connections, you were very much following a program business case approach, which included an ILM, the investment logic mapping, which is where you come up with these sorts of problem statements. And that was really the expectation of NZTA at the time. NZTA had been involved in quite a few sort of 30-year strategic planning exercises, both when they're looking at transport plans for each of the major metros up and down the country through Future-Proof and Smart Growth and their equivalents. And also starting to look, as the government was wanting a sort of 30-year infrastructure pipeline, at what those longer-term issues were and what they might need to do over their state highways over the next 30 years to maintain level of service. And so they recognised that the way that they were approaching those sorts of projects, actually, they were trying to squeeze too much into a process that wasn't really fit for that purpose. So they've broadened their approach to this, like I say, this phrase called strategic transport planning, and they are exercising that themselves. And it means that that approach is now available to councils as well to be able to do so. So we end up following a very, very similar process, but it gives us more flexibility about aspects of the methodology we're using, including how many problem statements there are.
I endorse this 3.
Joe.
Thanks, Monty. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, I also endorse these. I'm really happy with them. And I really like how they've encapsulated kind of the issues that we've been hearing, not just in the last version of the project, but for many years. These are very common issues in Cambridge. And I'm sure there'll be people who'll be listening and watching this going, this seems so self-explanatory, these problems. Let's just get to the good part. Let's think about the ideas and let's, get going. But it is so important, as you said before, to work through these NZTA processes so we do it properly, and then we can get to the solutions, and it has to be in that order. And I also really liked the nod you gave to the emergencies part of that, and how our emergency services have constraints, especially they can only use that Ferguson Bridge. So I thought that was really important. Just had one question for one, where it says, coupled with high reliance on private vehicles and limited transport choices, is it public transport choices you're meaning there, or is it just other transport modes?
So we mean all other modes. So it certainly includes public transport,
so
but it
it's
also
all
includes
encompassing.
walking and cycling and other micro-mobility options.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that was all encapsulated. Cool. Thank you.
Claire.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the problem statement. So these are just minor sort of, burrowing into the detail. And sort of picking up on what Joe said, actually 2 things. One was the emergency services, and I understood that that was just mentioned at number 3. But what I picked up was actually the feedback is that there's congestion throughout the urban network. It's not just the bridges that can constrain the passage of emergency vehicles. So I was thinking it might be better to have that in 1 or 2 as well. So I know you've got safety risks at number 1, but I didn't think that was a direct nod to emergency services. That's all. So I'd be inclined to want to weave into either 1 or 2, the risks that the congestion's posing for emergency services getting through on time. And they also said that because of the nature of the carriageways or the different treatments that the streets are having, people trying to get out of the way of emergency vehicles is actually causing damage and other negative impact. So, I was going to question whether or not those emergency services could be mentioned in 1 or 2. And the second one was following on from those points I raised about Mana Whenua aspirations, particularly for the health and well-being of the Waikato River. So it's not just about emissions, actually. The point they're making is, okay, so our high reliance on vehicles with brakes, okay, it's causing a lot of heavy metals to end up in the river. I think that's basically it in a nutshell. So in a way, our long-term plan to enable far more vehicles to be active in the, Cambridge area all the time is not going to help the Waikato River. And so part of our planning should be ways that we can manage the natural consequences of the use of these devices and vehicles, so that the river is protected in the way that gives effect to the vision and strategy, that we're all trying to, that we'll put our support behind. So I was asking whether or not that probably belongs in one, because it is about the high growth, the changes and what we can see going forward more than 2 and 3. So increasing emissions.
Would you be clear with increasing emissions and other environmental effects?
Protection, environmental effects,
Can I jump in? Can I just respond to the second point first? What I suggest, so problem statements need to obviously focus on the problem. I'm sorry to state the obvious. What we include in the draft strategic case, and on page 27 of the draft strategic case, set out alongside the problems are the anticipated benefits. And I think that what you're actually talking about is actually, that's right, could be better reflected as the benefits. And at the moment, it's certainly true that what we've called out is the preservation of cultural and environmental values for Mana Whenua, and we've talked about improved air quality, but we haven't called out the health of the awa itself, and we haven't called, so those are the things perhaps that we could take and reflect really strongly in the benefit statements as being a response to addressing these problems. I think that's probably the most appropriate place to address your second point. While I'm talking, if I may, just go back to the first one around the emergency services. Obviously, in your hands, my suggestion to you is that we need to find the right balance to make sure that we don't focus in on one type of user of the network at the expense of others. And so I think if we weave emergency services into more than one of those problem statements, then again, we're going to be placing an overimportance on those users of the network over and above others. So I think that that's the balance that we need to strike. So again, my suggestion to you would be to leave the problem statements as they are, because the feedback we've had is primarily about the river crossings, but absolutely acknowledge that congestion everywhere. And that's been the same thing about parking, which has obviously been some of the shorter term issues, is an issue, and that's something that we make sure comes through clearly in the evidence that we provide through the draft strategic case, so that we are thinking about that in the short term measures as well as the long term measures for that group.
I just want to respond to the emergency one, because I'm not sure if it was part of your material or some material that Roger might have actually sent through at us, but there were statements from, or I think it was a survey from emergency service providers that said that they definitely felt that deaths and more severe outcomes had been caused by delays in arrival to the emergency point, and that actually made a big impact on me. So yes, it might be giving more prominence to one particular set of users of the network, but my feeling is that it's warranted, actually. I think that we totally have to make sure that our long-term planning enables our emergency services to get to the place they need to go without delay. And if we're getting feedback from them, say at the moment, I'm sorry, but those outcomes are definitely worse because of the way the network is functioning. I feel it's up to us to try and do something about that.
Katie, do you want to respond to that? Or what you're thinking? Can I just challenge you, Claire, in one? Not challenge you, just delays and safety risks is quite an all-encompassing term. And while I was listening to you, I'm thinking, for me, delays and safety risks is broad enough to cover what you're getting at. And I acknowledge it's a really important consideration, but for me, it is captured. So yeah, in these problem statements, keeping them pretty straightforward has some advantage. They're bang, bang, bang. They're the problems. And if you start fast forwarding and trying to kind of almost weave solutions into them, it can become problematic. So yeah, that's my thought. Yep, sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm pleased to hear what, your views are, and other people are welcome to contribute. But in a way, I'm sort of picking up what Katie said about making sure the benefits are really explicit for those particular aspects that we want to demonstrate. I mean, that is a way forward. I guess the impression I got from reading the material that we had, that wasn't coming through very strongly about the difficulties that the emergency services are experiencing, and that that might be a way to satisfy that particular point. I'm not sure if we should be doing this in detail now while Katie's here, if this is the kind of the debate and discussion that we should be having once Katie's finished her presentation.
Look, just on that, we've talked about this in advance, and given this is a technical drafting issue, I've actually asked Katie to stay, because if we do end up changing something, I want to do it in consultation with Katie, and we'll actually change the words, and then we'll get into the formal part. But I didn't want to draft by committee without an expert here, okay? So that's why this is happening. Katie, do you want to respond to this particular statement 1 question?
I agree that the delays and safety risks should be able to cover that. And to your point, beefing up both about the way we express that and the benefits, and then the supporting evidence is something that we can certainly do in the draft strategic case.
Am I getting the sense from the table people are kind of comfortable with that? That don't have to give me just a kind of nod of the head is kind of good, because I can get a sense. Okay, and Claire, I think you're all right. Okay, good. Okay, we'll move on. Les, you're next.
Yeah, just regarding the current congestion and going through Cambridge, the Transit New Zealand have basically said they're not interested in putting on an on-ramp. Do you think we should have a more robust discussion with them regarding what's going to happen in the years ahead? We have the trucks coming up from the now proposed sandpit. They'll be going through town, destroying our internal roads as a cost to us over the next 25 years. Not only are those trucks going out loaded, they'll be coming back empty. They've got to go through town to come back empty to go to the sandpit. So basically, can we do an investigation into what that on-ramp would mean to the congestion in Cambridge and the advantages of not only the trucks going north, but also vehicles, cars, and any other vehicles going through using that on-ramp?
Yes, definitely. That will be one of the options that we consider as part of the long list. And so we will model the impact of that, so you can see what the costs and benefits would be of ramps, both the north-facing ramps as well as full interchange at Tito Road. And NZTA have agreed that we will work together to make sure that the way that we set up that option and the assumptions about that's something that they are comfortable with, and they provide us all the data they've got, so that option is something that they also rely on in their own planning, and that they'll be informed by that work. They are about to kick off a bit of strategic transport planning about all of the state highway from Hamilton through to Tauranga over the next 30 years. And so the output of our work in Cambridge Connections will feed directly into that, and we are well aligned.
Thanks, Katie. That was a great answer. Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I wasn't nodding before when you asked us to nod. And the comment I wanted to make is I actually support what Councillor St Pierre was saying about making the wording a bit stronger around emergency services and not giving the impression that it's just the fact that there's only a couple of crossings of the river, but in fact that it's access, I presume, I don't know where the St John's is in Cambridge. I presume it's in the middle of town also somewhere, along with police and the fire brigade. And I imagine for Cambridge, the way it's been laid out now with the where the retirement villages are being located and other developments are taking place, that they would have difficulty going from where they are now in all directions because of all of those things. And, you know, and using the term emergency services, I think is a strong, strong language. Not even during emergencies, actually using emergency services. That's my view on that point.
Okay, Dean. So no, thanks for that. I mean, so you're supporting Claire. My sense is it's a minority view, a very valid minority view in terms of changing the problem statements, but that your concerns will be dealt with elsewhere in the strategic case and in the assessment of the solutions going forward. Would that be fair, Katie? But look, if I'm trying to read the table here without obviously going to a vote, if I'm misreading, if people have got an appetite for change here, could you in some way indicate to me that?
And clarification? A clarification, like if this is an issue, is it something that could be actually consulted on in that intense period of community engagement in February and March, whether or not we should be beefing up, you know, part of the wording? Like, is that going to be part of the consultation or the engagement that we will be sort of putting these under scrutiny? And we may well be get that back from the community.
Yeah, we can certainly make sure that the emergency services are identified as a specific group that we work with in the next phase of the project.
But having said that, the intention is that the draft problem statements become our problem statements today and endure. The strategic case underneath is going to develop as we go. So look, what I'm trying to say here is no one's disagreeing with your perspective, the importance of it, but I'm still not getting a sense that we're at the level of changing the problem statements just yet, but let's run a little bit longer. Shane, it was you.
So because the process is so good, I have no issue with that problem statement whatsoever. Because we also have a long process, some of these points like emergency services will come up through that process in terms of the benefits. So I'm very relaxed with the problem statement as it stands because I know there's a process to continue. So I'm supporting that problem statement as is without any alteration.
Okay, Pip, thanks.
I concur with Shane.
Okay, we will subsequent to this get into a debate about approving these as our problem statements, and if you feel strongly still at that point, you could seek an amendment, okay, and then I can formally put it to the vote. That's probably the best way forward here. But if I get a sense of overwhelming desire for change now, we'd do it now, right? Okay. Roger.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to have another voice. I also am concerned, obviously, about the emergency traffic. And Claire, you quite rightly pointed out the information that I've shared with all elected members. But I'm quite happy with the delays and safety risks as it's mentioned there. But also just acknowledging that we've already been advised that there will be some short-term discussions about some of the immediate problems that are actually in our network currently that are going to happen over the next couple of months, particularly on the possibility of the sand trucks and the quarry, and also of the speed humps and speed mitigations, which Brian has agreed to have a session on. So I think that this problem statement captures that, but just acknowledging that there will be some shorter term discussions towards some mitigation of the problems that we are currently having in Cambridge.
yeah, I think it's really important to clearly differentiate in your mind between the problem statements and the range of potential solutions. And once we start exploring the range of potential solutions and then landing them, there will be short, medium and long-term solutions. Forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn here, Katie. If I say anything wrong, jump in. But yeah, there will be a range of solutions that can be implemented as we go forward into further long-term plans and so on. Katie, do you want to add anything there? Okay. Well,
Just follow up for our subsequent discussion. I'm quite comfortable with how the problem statements are as they are. I've already provided feedback. If we were to expound upon number one with those emergency services pieces that we've just been discussing, pros, cons, or otherwise of doing such a tweak, Katie?
I think the advantages that you acknowledge that that's been a concern that's been raised previously by the emergency services. The disadvantage is that when we start looking at solutions and we start coming to thinking about the next phases, we start to filter those from a sort of potential long list. One of the things that we will be coming to you for a decision about is what the criteria are that we use to actually assess those different options. And we will be relying on what's in the problem statements to guide that. If we've placed, if we place too much emphasis on any one aspect, that will end up swaying the range of solutions that would come through strongly at the end of the process. So we want to make sure that you've got the right balance between addressing the freight issues that have been talked about today, the accessibility issues that have been raised today, the amenity of the town centre, and emergency services and as reflected through here. And so the question for you to consider now is whether you think that we've got the balance about right between those different user groups and needs and issues across or not, and that's your call.
Thanks, Katie. Just a quick follow-up. So if I were to read that back to you, what you were saying is at this point, there is advantage to describing this as widely and as generally as we can so that we can come up with as good a answer to cover all of those things to cover everything, not just specific things.
Yes, that's right. And I think what we as staff would obviously take from the discussion today around this is making sure that we really do gather the proper evidence to support the issues that are here and therefore what the best solutions might be to address it.
okay, Jo.
Oh, just quickly for me, I was just going to say, I'm happy to keep the problem statements as they are. I think there are so many things that we could be adding in here. You know, I'm thinking about safety of kids biking to school. I'm thinking of pedestrian safety. There's so many things, but you're right. We do start to get into solution-based side of things. I think for all of us, the emergency services is going to be so important in our hearts and minds as we go forward. But we risk taking them from these kind of broad statements and getting too much into detail. And, you know, we will be making some really important decisions and keeping emergency services in mind, but those decisions are coming later. So I'm happy as they are.
Okay, people. No more questions. If that is the case, I'll just give you 5 seconds to think about it. If not, we'll ask Katie to leave. And thanks, Katie. That was great. And thanks, everyone. Good discussion. Long may this continue in SPMP. The recommendations are on page 2 of Katie's report. They are A through E. I intend to put them just A through D first, and then we'll do the problem statements second. So A through D are receiving Katie's report, receiving the report detailing the key themes from public engagement, and receiving the report, the engagement statistics, and the draft strategic case that is also added there. And as we've been saying, you'll see there's a bunch of gaps and highlighted yellow things in there, which are going to be filled in as we go, which is entirely appropriate. So recommendations A through D, can I have someone move them? Aon and Roger, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion around those that anyone would like to bring forth? Importantly, does anyone have any opposition to those 4 recommendations? No. In that case, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, now the draft problem statements, which you're going to share on screen. We are going to be sharing on screen, and it's exactly the same as the text that we just had up, I'm assuming. Katie, just while that's happening, can I clarify that the text going up is exactly what we've just had? Yes. Good. Katie responded in the affirmative to that, so we don't all have to proofread it. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Right, just while waiting for it to come up, and it's a side issue to us, but it's picking up on Lisa's point about the northern access, you know, and trying to always push for that. Yeah, I note too that the Chamber of Commerce and others are also pushed for a southern access. So I guess down the track, it's just keeping that conversation obviously going with NZTA.
Okay, so there's E. And the reason it's in red is because it's different to what was circulated in the meeting pack, right? But it's the same as what we've just been debating, which went on the screen. Yes, yes, so different to the publicised meeting pack, but the same as what we just debated. Everyone understand that? Oh, I've lost my place. Right, and the rest of them are underneath there, are they, Joe? Yeah. No, this is all part of E.
So probably the best way, if you want to see all 3 at once, is to go back to this slide.
Okay.
This slide. So and just note that obviously that's the recommendations that reflects what changes you make to the problem statements.
Yep. Okay, so sorry, my diligent just shut down at exactly that moment. Katie, can you come up and just explain that again? I got lost for a second then because my diligent died just at an opportune moment. I just want to be really clear that everyone understands what they're resolving here, okay?
Yeah. So the recommendation in the paper itself just refers to approving the problem statements that are in section 4 of the report. Section 4 of the report differs in problem statement 2 based on that feedback, and what you've got on the screen that you've been discussing for the last while is the updated version, and so that is what you are now considering whether you want to approve the draft problem statements as per your discussion this morning, and which with the other 2 are exactly the same. It means that the recommendation in the paper is amended just as Joe was putting up there, that you would be approving the problem statements. So no, I don't have the words in front of me. Subject to the amendments to the problem statements, as you would agree.
Thank you. That very clear. Sorry, my apologies. Diligent dying. That second didn't help. Yep. So we're going back to the amended recommendation coming up. Okay. Brilliant. Right. Would anyone like to move and second? Joe moving? Who's seconding? I'm the second. Discussion required here. Does anyone want to speak in favour of these problem statements, or is everyone happy just to rest on the general discussion we've had? Okay, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just like to endorse the change to the commentary on point 2. I agree with the increased reference explaining that problem statement.
Thank you, Roger. Mike?
Yeah, and look, and just to reinforce that, just that this is good governance, that it was put in first, we're asked for feedback. Those who feedback some good stuff, feed it back in, and it's made a difference. So this is good governance.
Okay, we've had a mover and a seconder. A couple of people have spoken in favour. Would anyone like to speak against these problem statements? Great. I think we've had a really good debate. It's been good. And I'm really happy that we have good group consensus here. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Yeah, no, that was really good. And that actually brings us to the end of our agenda. I just want to have a couple of closing comments. This is my first time chairing SPMP. I intend to be a servant leader of the group, which means my job is to facilitate good discussion, good questions, good decision making. To that end, I absolutely welcome feedback after these. Constructive, please. But we intend as a group of chairs to critique each other. But to the wider group, if you ever feel like you're not getting a fair go at it or a fair question or whatever, I'm entirely open to discussing that with you afterwards. And we're needed improving my practice, okay? So, because I want the group to really feel like we're debating stuff well and deciding well. And if you're on the wrong side of the decision, I want you to know you're on the wrong side of the decision, but you've got a fair chance to make your case, okay? So, going forward, very welcome to have that feedback. Okay. Roger, yeah, sure. A bit of feedback right now. I was kind of meaning maybe in private.
At least it's not fruit.
I'm really pleased with the changes, but will there be somewhere in Diligent where we can access this corrected series of problem statements?
Yeah, the answer was it'll be at the bottom of the agenda in Diligent. So Diligent will get updated to reflect what we just approved, okay? And Ian, have you got something to say?
Yeah, mine was actually just from earlier, following on to Les's point, because I must admit, I thought that level of feedback was a bit low as well. So I did a quick bit of analysis, and we should check this, but if you assume that the Cambridge population is the affected population that we're polling here, that gives us 110 bits of feedback per 10,000. So as a reference, using the same method, Auckland Light Rail got 8.3 bits of submission per 10,000. Let's Get Wellington Moving got 36. And the Waikato Expressway got 40. So we have exceeded all of those. So I think, for me, it's all about a relative. I agree it's not that much, but to Shane's point that he has made once, and I'm sure he will make again, people don't get interested till people get interested. So I think some sort of measures like that, Katie, that can show not only how we're getting the feedback, but how does that compare to similar efforts, gives us a good ability to be able to gauge whether what we're getting is meaningful or not. That was it, right?
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll close the meeting there. We're having a 20-minute morning tea break, and then we're back for workshops, okay? Thank you. reconvene this workshop. And we are being live streamed? Okay, cool, just so you know. Right, I'm just going to introduce this. So what we're looking at here is an SPMP work program. This is something of a new initiative for us. In my last training, this didn't really feature in committees. And Joe and I, as chair and deputy of this committee, wanted real clarity about the work plan ahead, because it's quite a wide and varied work plan. For me, there'd always been a bit of a sense when I synced Diligent, it was kind of like a lucky dip, what was there. And I didn't want that. I wanted everyone to understand our work plan. And so we asked the staff to prepare this, and the staff have very, very kindly done it. Now, it's going to be a really living document, really dynamic document, okay? I'm expecting this to change the whole time. And I don't want you putting these dates in your diary or hammering the staff if in 10 months' time, something doesn't happen, okay? That's not the point of this. The point of this is to understand the work ahead of us, and for me and Joe and the staff to sort of keep an eye on how our workflow is going. So yeah, that's the point. It's very indicative, it's very dynamic, and we intend to keep bringing it back to the meeting. I think at this stage it'll be by way of a chair's report, which will just be the work plan, and we'll do it each SPMP meeting, just check in where we're at, what's ahead, so everyone knows what we're doing. It'll be a standing agenda item, okay? I just think that's good practice. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Kirsty and Melissa. We'll just have a look at this. We've got 20 minutes, so we can introduce the concept and actually have a little bit of a look through it, because just to see what is coming ahead, and some time for questions, okay?
So just before we start, whilst it's presented on the screen, it is also in Diligent. So under Strategic Planning and Policy Committee workshops, there is a tab 1, which is the briefing for SPMP Future Work Programme. On page 3 of that section, you will find the beginning of the table.
Yeah,
Yes, you will. Yes, it is also depicted on the screen, which Melissa will lead you through, but it's there for your future reference.
Cool. And it's in 2 parts, people. It's the first part is arranged by work stream. I know some people really hate that word, but it works for me, the word work stream. So first up is all the work streams that are going to be coming through SPMP, with sort of indicative steps under each work stream. And then the second part of this is arranged by chronological order, so giving some sense of what will be falling into the meetings going forward. Okay.
Cool, thank you. So you've already said a lot of what I was kind of going to introduce this item with, actually. But I guess I just want to reiterate the point that this is very much a draft. So at a present point in time, this is what we're aware of, and these are kind of the intended timeframes around when we're looking to present projects by way of, the detailed items to SPMP, either through a formal meeting or via a workshop. But yes, absolutely subject to change. You'll also notice that this involves projects not just led out of the strategy group, but across the organisation. So just want to make that point. And as Monty said, this is going to be presented as part of each formal report, just to help keep this front of mind, keep the document live. And I guess as we sort of work through to kind of tighten up and refine these timeframes as we work through it. That was probably all that I was actually going to say, but really just looking for feedback through this group. As Monty said, it is presented first by project workstream, and then as a meeting and workshop dates in chronological order.
So I'll just start with a question from me. When you look through this, I'm sure some people will have ideas on on how things are tracking. Like, for example, say the annual plan, you know, how it's scheduled. If people sort of have a feeling, hey, we might need to discuss that more, I think that would probably come to me and Joe as chair and deputy chair. I wouldn't be expecting that kind of feedback to go to exec level. And then when we have our regular pre-meeting catch-ups, that's when we'd be discussing those kind of things. So that's the way I see it working. You're nodding, which hopefully means that's the way you see it working too.
Absolutely. And I think also that you're sitting at PGG for, you know, by way of example, for some of those big rocks, LTP, annual plan, yourself and me, Mike, are sitting at the PGG. So you're able to also feed, as in your role as chair of this committee, feed into that. So absolutely, that's an appropriate course of action, is to provide that feedback through to yourself and Joe.
Great. So the take-home message from that is if people are seeing things they want to query, a question, come through me and Joe on that primarily. Okay. Roger, your question?
Yes, thank you. It's going to be a busy year, isn't it? Yeah. We've already had notification that there are going to be a number of intended government legislation pieces that are going to be up for submission with a closing date when? End of January, sometime during February?
20th of
Yeah.
February.
Which they're going to be important pieces of legislation for us. How are we going to handle that? Because obviously there'll be a need for discussion around this table on feedback to those pieces.
So absolutely, Roger, you make valid points, and we had quite a discussion on this at the executive team meeting yesterday. Acknowledged that this is something that requires priority response from the organisation, not only individually but also working in collaboration with our partners. So acknowledge that yes, there will be a need to engage with elected members, and the government is consistently unkind to us in providing these Christmas gifts ahead of the summer break. So we have got a few, you will see on what page is that? 4, that there is at the first SPNP meeting for the beginning of February that we will be looking to engage with you. That's not to say we won't be doing that informally ahead of that date. There will be a lot of work that will be undertaken. We're talking about how we resource that and over that Christmas period. So we will be communicating with you an outline of what that will look like. Expect that there will be something from us informally well ahead of that February SPNP meeting.
It just does concern me a little bit that there may be a little bit of divergence of opinion between the council officers in terms of some of that legislation and perhaps some of the views expressed around this table. I'm wondering how we're going to handle that, if it's going to be just waiting until a paper gets presented at that committee meeting.
So I think I've just responded saying to you that it would be unlikely that we would just be dropping something through a formal committee agenda at the beginning of February. We will also be working closely with our chair, deputy chair, the mayor, and as I said, we're shaping up what that looks like, and that will be led by the executive team, ensuring that we adopt a cross-organisational and strategic approach. But hear your points and look what needs to be represented as a response from Waipa District Council on behalf of our Waipa communities, not council staff. Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As I think Melissa, you alluded to, and so did you, Monty, that this is going to be a changing document, like a living document, so to speak. And I'm just wondering, it's probably going to be through the Merrills Forum, this whole regional council, you know, and what's going to happen in there. So I'll ask those folks if we can get a work stream as well, like a work plan just like this, and then we'll work out how we feed that back in, because this would be the committee to feed it back into. The other one is, duration and frequency. It'll be interesting to see the duration of some of these meetings with some of the sort of, there's some hefty stuff in here. And so I think we're looking at frequency of meetings coming up, but it's more so going to be next year. I think we just need to be open to the fact that there could be some additional meetings. And just picking up on Roger's point, I'm just wondering whether it would not pay to put a placeholder meeting in before the 20th, but after the 4th. Because my understanding is there's going to be some work done over the holidays, because that's the only time, unfortunately, it is going to be predominantly done. Yeah, a lot of it will be done by staff, but we'll have some oversight into that, but there's only 2 or 3 of us. The 4th, as you said, it's not going to be all done up. Just putting it to the chair, really, would it be worth considering a placeholder meeting before the 20th, but after the 4th of Feb? Well, I'm just thinking like the RMA changes are coming through. I mean, whether they're going to settle on February the 20th as well, I guess we don't know. But what we do predict is they're coming out the side of Christmas. Everything else has landed on February the 20th so far, the 3 bits of change.
Sorry, I know that you directed that question to Monty, Mike, but certainly we can take that away and work with the governance team as to possible dates. And even if we just put them in as placeholders, yeah, we'll look at avoiding other clashes, but yeah, in that February.
Are people happy with that? That put it in rather than say actually in 2 weeks you've got to put it in to pull it out if we don't need it?
Go ahead, Delmarie.
Apologies, I'm just mindful that Pip and I will be away on the 11th and 12th in Auckland at Commissioner training. And as the other person board, like yourself and usually the deputy, we canvass the district as a whole. I'm just mindful of the commitments, because this is starting to sound like a full-time job in the chamber. So,
Look, good comments. And for me, that's one of the strengths of having this document, laying it out in advance. Because we can manage the workflow and the time commitments on elected members. But it's quite a long and staggering list, this, of what has to happen in the next year. So there are going to be some pretty full agendas. And I mean, potentially there's a few workshops to be worked in and around these big rocks, depending on how things play out. If the last long-term plan is anything to go by, there is a bunch of workshops that have to fit in around these key decision points. So keep the feedback coming to Joe and myself, and we'll keep trying to do the best job we can about facilitating this program of work, okay, in conjunction with our staff. Okay, anything further there? Okay. Thank you very much. New initiative, let's see how it goes. I'm sure this will get, there'll be a bit of fine tuning, but start up, I really love it, okay? And I guess we'll be looking to the key strategy team to maintain this going forward. Is that's where the responsibility will lie? So that's what we'll be talking to?
That's correct.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
So that's how we'll proceed. Keep the feedback coming to me and we'll have a line of communication with these two. Right, thanks everyone. Okay, cool.